Worlds will live and worlds will die, and characters will too.
Really? Which ones? Oh, no.
This film is a Barry Allen Flash story from start to finish, so we get a holistic sense of who he is as a character.
I was a big Barry Allen fan. It definitely blew my mind seeing him sacrifice himself.
No!
Nobody had ever done something like this.
They made some very tough decisions in Crisis on Infinite Earths. To have a series where all of reality is endangered and all our heroes survive and are alive at the end would take a little bit of the threat out of the Anti-Monitor, and the perceived stakes of this whole series would be diminished.
You need characters to make some heroic sacrifice. And I feel like that was the key to having the Flash threaded throughout the story. He was a guy who first ran on the cosmic treadmill and connected with other Earths.
It really was important to take an A-list character and eliminate him because of the stakes. It's one thing to kill some of the secondary characters, but when you're threatening the Flash and you kill him in number 8 with 4 more to go, the reader's like, oh my God, who's next?
Our intent was to show the Marvel readers that DC wasn't an old, staid company. It was vital that characters had to die. We had to surprise the fans and say, we're moving into the next generation. If you think that DC is an old fuddy-duddy company, you're wrong. And here's the proof. Because we can take a character like Flash and we can move them out of the way in a way that the fans would never expect and then create something even better.
Killing him and starting over again made the most sense, as did turning this uniform over to Wally West and making him the 3rd generation of Flash, which gives us the sense of legacy that's something DC has been thriving on ever since.
That was a brilliant move to show the potential of that character and give him a really compelling story arc within Crisis. I still feel bad that he died, but DC spent many years with Wally West stepping up as the Flash, and I love that stuff as a reader.
I have a love for the Flash. If you care about the characters, you're going to write a scene that the fans are going to look at and never forget. It's going to resonate. It's going to stay in their memories.
Oops, my bad.
Adapting a comic, it's a balancing act. Comics and animation, some things work really well for one and don't work well for the other. How much of this can we keep, but also serve the story the best we can?
Our version of that story from the comic is not the same because he was basically captured most of that story. It couldn't have worked for us to do it as a linear film story, so we had to scrap a lot of that. Our Barry Allen version in this story, we had to use the device of time slipping because we had to slip back and forth. We had to show how the Justice League was formed.
The worlds are ending.
Making sure we were setting up the stakes as we went gave it more gravity, but also to see how this character who's self-sacrificing and being late to everything and trying to balance those 2 worlds. He wanted to save Iris, but also be able to save everything.
I'm so sorry I wasn't here for you.
You were. You were always right on time when I needed you.
It's a challenge to take all of those threads and reweave them into something that is fresh enough, but is still honoring to the original.
We really wanted to harken back to George Perez and what he did. Hopefully the fans see a lot of those shots.
Following the Flash's story is germane to understanding everything that happens in the series. The Flash, we see him in a moment in War World that's going to pay off later on in Crisis.
Go back. You must go back. You must stop it.
And that was part of what Marv and George did in the comic. We see the Flash die over and over again, and the question is, what is happening? How did he get here? What's he trying to tell us? And is what he's trying to tell us going to help us solve the big problem at the end of this movie?
You have to very carefully build towards that, where you feel an attachment to those characters so that when they do die, it means something to you. So once you set all that up, the actual scene where they die isn't too tough. It's the setup that's the most important part to that. To see that sacrifice at the end, I'd hope it hits the audience pretty hard.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Central City anymore.
It's always a great opportunity when you're playing a hero to get to see the part that makes them human and relatable.
Weak. I'm not weak, you're just heavy.
Matt, we definitely wanted his voice as Flash. It's more like a natural voice. It's an audience-pleasing type of voice, and then his acting skills were obviously needed in his last story as Flash.
He drained the energy out of me. If he gets yours,
Don't worry, I'll keep my distance.
Butch had told me when we first started this that we were going to have a real A to Z journey with this character to get to go really from their inception in this particular iteration all the way to the end of their journey is pretty unique.
I don't know if he was terrified or thrilled to get the script because he has to play brand new Flash, moments old.
Whoa, I know you. Robin Hood.
Not Robin Hood.
You're dressed like him.
And he has to play Justice League Flash. And he has to play Old Man Flash.
I'm old, not senile. At least, I don't think so.
He could have gone really gravelly and made it seem like he was ancient, which we didn't want. It was a very careful balance, and we had to do a couple of takes, a little more gravelly, a little less gravelly. Let's see if we can find that balance between the two.
And he differentiates the characters verbally very well.
That homeless guy, he did something to me. Sent me here.
Not just in its sound, but in kind of a world weariness. But his attitude remains constant. He is always the Flash, and he's always Barry Allen from the beginning to the end.
Friendly. No regrets?
None whatsoever.
The story of Iris and Barry is the story of the Flash. The one thing that people tend to know about Crisis on Infinite Earths is that Barry Allen dies. We had to retro-engineer a happy ending for him, and so he gets to save the world, but he gets to live out his entire life. With Iris,
Iris is this great, profound connection he has, and he gets to come at that through all different phases of their life.
she's there at the very beginning and then ultimately is there with him at the bitter end. It's very romantic.
This is the big one, Barry. Don't be late.